right, so now we're at the kind of the configuration stage. Everything's plugged in, we know everything's working, and in your setup you haven't set up the A3 yet, but that's okay. And everything else is working as far as we know, right? So I'm going to grab my little A3 dongle thing here, plug it into the USB and plug the other end into the plane. Now you may be doing this outside of your plane and then sticking the A3 in later, which is probably what I'd recommend, but mine's already stuck in the plane, so that's okay. I would probably do it outside the plane, kind of like this, get it all configured, and then stick it in at the very end when you're done, because you don't want to have to rip it back out again and mess with the servo plugs or anything like that. Okay, but we're going to go over to the computer and plug this in. Okay, and everyone should be able to see my entire screen now, I think. Make sure I get that right. I'm not, oops, sorry. I turn it on. There we go. Okay, now you shall be able to see my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my A3 Hobby Eagle configurator, which you can download from the link in the assignment. And it will open up like this. Okay, once your A3 is plugged into your computer, you'll see a COM port down here, or you may have to hit that button to search for COM ports. Okay, once it finds a COM port, it'll say connected here, and then you're going to hit connect right here. Okay, let's make sure we're getting all this. Okay, sorry, throwing my mouse highlighter thing on for you guys too, so you can see it a little bit easier. Okay, so here is the A3 configurator once I've connected, and my transmitter is going to keep telling me engine off the whole time we're talking. I apologize. This is your basic setup for your plane, for your page. Okay. Now, when you have your A3 plugged into the computer, it powers the A3. It doesn't power your receiver or anything else. Okay. And so that's an important thing to notice. You're not going to see anything from your receiver until you actually power up your plane with a battery or a wall power supply. Then you'll see things move when you move your sticks, etc., etc. Right now we're going to go through the setup without our plane powered. So my plane is not currently plugged into a battery or the wall. Only the A3 is plugged into the USB port on my computer. All right. So we have these kind of overall tabs up here on the top, along the top line of the configurator. Okay. A basic, wing type, mount orientation, receiver, servo, and sensor. Okay. The basic page here is where we're going to start. Flight modes. Okay, these are the three modes I'd recommend for this aircraft. There are other flight modes you can check out if you look at the manual for the A3 from Hobby Eagle. Okay, some of these modes won't really work on our plane, like the hover mode. Unfortunately, probably won't really work because usually you want the motor to be in the front of the plane and try to hover like a helicopter, not the back. Okay, but for right now we'll use these three modes. So I have off, normal, and angle. And again, that'll give me the manual mode. So the flight controller is essentially turned off. Normal mode where it kind of helps with the wind, but doesn't self-level. And then angle mode where it self-levels the plane. Now the maximum angle here, roll and pitch, I've set to 45. I'd recommend you start with that at least. I think the default is like 65, which is pretty steep. So it'd be nice to limit it a little bit more for you. Maybe you can even go less than 45, maybe like a 30 degree or something, which will make it really hard to, roll the plane over and crash it. Okay. I'm going to put 45 in mine just because I've tried it a little bit before and that seems to work pretty good. All right. So there's our flight mode settings there. We have our gyro setting. Okay. So which surfaces do we want it to try to control? All right, now we'll go over this reverse category a little bit later, but for right now I've just turned the rudder off because we don't have a rudder on our plane. So there's no point in trying to get the A3 to control a rudder or control any yaw movements because there is no yaw control. So you can go ahead and turn that off. Again, we'll get to this reverse category later. Gain settings, just leave this all at default. Okay, for now, you can tweak those later, but I'd leave them at default to start with. These can all be left at default. I did change the control behavior to very stable. Just to try that out. Now I actually haven't flown very stable yet. I've only flown normal, so I'm kind of curious what'll happen. So you can try very stable if you'd like, or you can just leave it on normal. That's totally fine as well. And that's all you should have to do here. Okay. On each page, when you change things, you want to hit this write button down here, and it will write those changes to the flight controller or save them onto your A3, and that's what you want to do when you're working on this. All right. First tab there. Second tab, wing type. We are flying a standard type wing. We don't have a rudder, but that's okay. The other wing types aren't going to work for us, so we need to use the standard type and just ignore the rudder. We have an elevator and we have two ailerons. Okay. Mount orientation. This is where I was talking about how you want to stick the A3 physically in your plane. Okay, mine is mounted in this orientation. The nose is still towards the nose. The servo pins or servo plugs face towards the right side of the plane, and so that would be appropriate for me. If yours is mounted in a different direction, you can kind of visually see those. You know, how is it upside down? Is it right side up? Is it on the other side of the plane compared to what mine is at? However you have it, you just want to select that. But again, you always have to have the front, those little orange arrow on the A3 pointing towards the nose of the plane. There's no exceptions to that, which is kind of a bummer because it'd be nice to configure it a little bit more differently, but it works okay for us. So we'll leave it as mine is. You select your orientation there. Okay. Those first three tabs are great. Those you can do without the receiver or anything plugged in or turned on or anything like that. The receiver tab is the first one where we need to actually power up our aircraft, which powers up our receiver. So let's brake for a second.